I was around 10 years old playing in my room before bed. 90s kids will remember those little metal matchbox cars, about the size of a roll of quarters. I had quite a collection and would drive them around on the carpet. Think Danny in The Shining. On this ordinary night, my father came into my room and told me it was bedtime in 10 minutes, but I decided that I wasn't done playing, and so I would sneak a few cars into my bed. After he turned off the light and went downstairs, I pulled back my covers and continued playing with my cars. My room was pretty big. My bed was on the far side against the wall across from the door. Next to the door was a giant wooden toy box. The room also had high ceilings that went even higher, where the skylight was in the center, higher than anyone could reach. After only about 10 minutes or so of playing in the dark in my bed, I realized it wasn't nearly as much fun as I thought it'd be, and so I put my head down. A moment later, an incredible thing happened. One of the cars, my favorite red convertible actually, began to levitate. It floated up before my eyes and across the room in an arching path. It moved fast, but deliberate, and much too slow as to have been thrown. And because my room was so big, this lasted a good 3 seconds. It went high up, almost to the ceiling, where I couldn't reach, and down again on the other side of the room, above my toy box. It hung there for a moment, as I watched in disbelief, before dropping suddenly, making a loud sound as the metal car landed in the wooden box. I prayed that the noise would cause my father to come back up, as I was too scared to move, quite literally frozen with fear. In my mind at the time, all I could think was ghost, having seen poltergeist and the like, and because the object had ended on the other side of the room, next to the door, which was the only exit, I couldn't run in the opposite direction. My only escape was to run directly at whatever it was. I couldn't bring myself to do that. So I closed my eyes tightly and pretended to be asleep. My strategy was to make whatever it was that was trying to scare me think that I had missed it. My eyes were closed and I was asleep. Didn't see it. Being a Catholic schoolboy, I just prayed and prayed. Eventually, I did fall asleep, because in what seemed like no passage of time, I was instantly waking up to the delight of sunlight beaming in through the windows. I shot out of bed like a cannon and bolted across the room, confirming that my toy car was indeed in the toy box where it had landed. I lunged downstairs to tell my parents what had happened. So yeah, that's pretty much it. My parents still remember how emphatic I was that morning about what I had seen. There's no reasonable explanation other than perhaps it was all a dream. But I know it wasn't. And other than the typical stuff that happens to people, hearing a whisper, seeing something move out of the corner of your eye, nothing else ever came close to that. It kind of broke my mind in a way, because how impossible it is.
On Halloween night in 2012, I was riding a moped to my friend's house to hang out. I lived in a very small town and the fastest posted speed limit sign was 35 miles per hour. I was at a stoplight when the light turned green, so I started to go. All of a sudden, I was hit by a Cadillac CTS sedan going just over 40 miles per hour that had run a red light. This caused a serious injury accident since I was on a moped. I was airlifted to a level 1 trauma hospital. I bled out in the helicopter. Once I arrived at the hospital, the emergency room doctor performed a clamshell thoracotomy. I remember feeling very peaceful as I walked through the flaps of a massive, bright white tent. Inside the tent, it was full of light and happiness. There was every kind of animal walking around in harmony with humans. All of the humans were younger. Nobody looked older than 30 years old. Everybody was jovial and laughing. It was a place that I had never been before and I didn't want to leave. I looked to my right and saw a young man in military fatigues. I thought to myself, I know him. That's my grandfather. He was so young and I had never seen him like that. My grandfather was seated and told me to sit next to him. I gladly came over and sat down. We started talking. We talked for what seemed like hours upon hours. I specifically remember stressing that my legs are in so much pain and I'm fearful I will never walk again. My grandfather assured me that my legs would be all right. I always respected and trusted my grandfather, and at that point I knew I would be okay. Then I started hearing a female voice calling my name. After a few times of hearing my name, I recognized the voice as coming from my mother. I told my grandfather that I have to go because Mom is calling me and I don't want her to be upset. My grandfather asked me to stay with him. I remember considering what I should do. I remember getting up from the chair and heading towards my mother's voice. Then I woke up from my coma. My mother kept whispering my name in my ear and telling me how much she loved me. I was back in this world we call life. After a few weeks, a nurse had asked if I went anywhere while in my coma. I told her yes and proceeded to tell the nurse and my folks where I was and what I saw.
I was working ICU and caring for a patient with breast cancer who was dying, minimally responsive for days. This was a long time ago when we actually kept dying patients in ICU. Anyway, she suddenly awoke and was very lucid, asking for some water. I was a little stunned but got her water for her. After she drank, she said, "Do you know what Jesus just asked me?" Of course I got a few chill bumps at this point, but answered, "No, what?" She said, "He asked me if I had done everything with love." "And what did you say?" I replied. "I told him that I had tried," she said. I told her that most likely that is all any of us are capable of doing. I turned her with some pillows and she fell asleep and died about 10 minutes later. Needless to say, this affected me greatly. I want to be able to give the right answer when Jesus asks. The second incident, we had an older man with a massive heart attack, lots of other problems, and he ended up on the ventilator. He was the meanest old coot ever. His granddaughter worked at the hospital and apologized for his behavior and told us he had always been quite a rounder. He would bite, kick, spit, and had to be restrained to keep him from pulling every line he had out. We coded him 3 times during his stay. After the 3rd time, his demeanor changed and he became much more cooperative. We explained the change as a bit of ICU psychosis that had resolved. The gentleman became a frequent flyer in our ICU, coming in multiple times with CHF and becoming a regular at our outpatient CHF clinic. He became a favorite, always smiling, joking, a dear man. One day he asked me, "Do you remember the first time I was here and how awful I was?" I assured him that I did indeed remember. He said, "Do you know why I changed?" I replied that I didn't, but just thought that his mayness was related to his illness. He said, "No, it wasn't that. The last time you guys brought me back when my heart stopped, I woke up and remembered being in this very dark place. It was awful. It was totally black and there was this awful smell of sulfur and the heat was terrible. I called out and no one answered. I remembered hearing that when people die and then come back, a lot of them see a light and a lot of other good stuff. I was scared. I didn't see a light and I knew then I had to change." He lived a couple more years after telling me his story, and when he finally died in our ICU, I have a feeling that he saw the light and the good things, at least I hope so.
If you like stories like these, please support this channel by leaving a comment, liking, subscribing, and/or sharing. Please comment which story you found the most interesting. Thank you for your time today.